Hello and welcome back. So in the last episode we created this character. You can right click to move him around. You can left click to aim. Now I want to start with some basic texturing of the map. To do that I'm going to use something called SurForge. And so I'm just going to get the windows ready by dragging these around. Now I'm going to click on Window and SurForge. And that button only shows up if you bought and downloaded the SurForge asset to your game. If you don't want to buy it, that's totally fine. You can just skip ahead in the video, but I'm just going to use this to create some textures. So I clicked on New Texture. Oh, and actually I'm going to undo. I don't want that in this scene. So I'm going to create a new scene. New Texture. There we go. Now basically we have a 3D object up here and we have a flat plane here, which is essentially the UV map of this model. So like in Blender we have a weapon and we basically cut it into a flat image so that we can map materials to it. So this right here is the plane and this is the model plane. Now we're going to use this plane to draw textures and materials and shapes directly onto this object. So to do that, I'm going to click on this Polylasso tool, and I'm going to double click to fill this UV island. Now if I hit space, it's going to render, and you can see already we have kind of a cool material on there. I can hit this randomize button, and it'll like randomly start swapping out materials. SurForge comes with a huge material library. I think that the material library itself is worth the price of the asset. And we can even just drop these on willy-nilly. So let's say we want a rusted floor with some basic sci-fi geometry. I'm going to grab this Polylasso tool and I'm just going to left click outside my shape. Holding shift locks your, it's going to like anchor by 45 degrees. So I'm going to put this right there, left click, drag down, and left click, or control click actually. And so basically that just split this geometry into two pieces. And now if I hit space, it's going to render that shape on here. Now this looks like it added geometry to the model. Like it looks like now there's a groove there. But we haven't actually added any vertices or any data to the mesh itself. We only created a material that makes it look like there's extra modeling. I think that's really cool. So we're going to continue with that. Polylasso, left click, shift, left click, shift, control click, left click, shift, control click, and just keep going. Left click, shift, left click, control click. And so basically the control clicking is splitting the geometry and the shift clicking is making sure you have 45-degree angles. So now I'm just going to hit space and render that. Already it's looking much more interesting. Now we can also go into seamless mode. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Seamless right here. And so that's going to give us an idea of what this would look like if it was a floor. We can also test this in different lighting situations, so we can just swap out skyboxes. So like if we're in a parking garage, this is what the model would look like. It rotates kind of weird when you're in seamless mode, but that's fine. We could also, let's get out of seamless mode for a second. We could also test it in like an outdoor environment, see what that looks like. And this is creating, they're called PBR shaders. It stands for physically based rendering, which is kind of like a big deal in modern game development. Really, really cool. Definitely worth $50 if you're able to shell out that much cash. So now the next really cool thing about this is go back into top-down view. I'm just going to select any of these pieces and hit numbers 1 through 0. and I can just assign different materials as I go. Now I can just randomize these, and if I hit space, it'll render, and already that looks a lot better. And I can just shuffle them and come up with a color scheme that looks good. None of these are looking that great. Also, I think I need more detail in this middle piece. So let's grab the polylasso tool, and let's just try a different pattern. Let's try something like this. And you need to make sure that you have the geometry selected if you're trying to cut it. Like I want to create a cut through this. So if it's not selected, it's not going to cut. Alright, now I'm going to just set that to a different material, render it again. That looks okay. I kind of like that color scheme. So next, we can add more details to that if we want. So there's like a add detail panel. Like I could just paint this directly on the model. Hit space to render. And again, it looks like there's like depth to this, but that's just being faked. It's like so well done though. It's not actually adding any detail to the model. And I'm not particularly good at texturing things myself, so I appreciate assets like this that make it a lot easier. And I think I want this to like repeat across the whole floor. So I'm just going to stop here with this piece, and I'm going to click on Export Maps. Make sure you put it in your Assets folder. If you put it outside the Assets folder, it's not going to show up in Unity. And I'm going to create a folder called Textures. And a folder called Ground Texture. I guess that should be with an S. Ground Textures. Enter. And we'll just call this orange, white, gray. Alright, so that just popped out some textures for us. Now I'm going to save this scene into a folder called Surforge Calibration. And so for each texture that I create, if I want to come back and edit it, I need to save this scene. And I'm going to put all my texture scenes within this Surforge Calibration folder. So now let's call this, what did I call it before? Orange, white, gray, something. That'll be fine. Now I'm going to open up my previous scene called Default Scene. And if we zoom in on the character, it looks pretty cool. Now we can, if we want to, we can put the material directly on the character, or we can put it on the ground. I think we should start with the ground. So we have textures, and I think I'm going to rename this materials. Orange, white, gray. And we can close the Surforge window for now. So now let's say I want to take this and put it on the ground. So right now this is just a white material, but we want to use all of these textures that Surforge gave us. It gave us albedo, emission, height map, normal map, occlusion, and specular. If you look at this material in the inspector, let's pull that over here. We have fields for all those different images, except specular. And that's because we're using the standard shader. We want to use this specular shader. So I'm going to make that change, and then I'm just going to start dragging these onto the material. And sometimes when you have a material selected, if you're trying to move around folders, you lose the selection. So I'm going to select the material and lock it. Albedo. Already there's like way more depth to the scene. This is the emission, which is black, so that's not actually doing anything. We have a height map, and you can see, let's create a new inspector. Oh, it's not going to let me. I think there's a way to duplicate this. Add tab, inspector. There we go. So if I zoom in on this image in my second inspector window, this is the height map, and basically the white areas are higher than the black areas, and so that's helping us fake this extra geometry. And then the same thing with normals. We just have different colors that represent the way we want the material to look. So we used albedo, height map, emission. Let's grab this normal map, drop it in the normal map section. And you can see it says the texture is not marked as a normal map. And that's going to happen every time. We just have to click Fix Now. And then we want, what else? Specular. And specular basically determines how metallic something looks. This one's really cool. So if I zoom out, you can see the whole thing. Watch how much it changes when I add specular. Bam. Looks way better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're missing one still. 3 is occlusion. Oh, and occlusion should help too. And you can see when I add that, it just makes the shadows look a lot better. The fake shadows. Now I'm going to add some tiling to this. Let's just start with 10 by 10. Now if I go into the game view, I think I need more. It looks a lot more like a sci-fi level now. Like maybe he's in like a spaceship hangar. And honestly, that's not the look that I want. Like maybe we could use this on a wall or something. It doesn't look good on the floor. So let's set this back to 1 by 1. And you know, maybe it'll work like that. No, it exposes too much detail in those flaws. So what I'm going to do is add a cube. We set its position. Oh yeah, and then we need to unlock the inspector so we can see the cube. And I'm just going to move this out, set it to 0.5 height, minus 10 on the Z, and then let's just scale this by like 10 each way. Maybe that's too much. 5 by 5 by 5. And the object origin is in the center, so if it's 10 units tall, we need it to be at a height of 5. Maybe? Oh, it's only 5 units tall. That makes sense. So we want it at 2.5. And now I'm just going to try the new material on this. Yeah, I think that looks pretty decent. So we can use that for walls in the scene. And they're on the wrong side of the character, of course. And I'm just going to rotate those on the x-axis by 180. That didn't work. Rotate. I guess we have to go over the z-axis. 180, just so the brighter part is at the top. And I think they look better when they're bigger, so let's just fix that really quick. Set it to 5 and duplicate. Alright, so that looks interesting for walls. And I don't know if you guys like the way that looks, but for how little work went into that, I'm pretty freaking proud of it. Now we need to do something for the floor. So we might as well go back to SurForge. I'm going to open up my... Actually, I'm just going to create a new scene. Drag the inspector back over here. SurForge. I haven't decided if I like that this is in Unity yet. I mean, it's cool. It's kind of slow. But I definitely like how easy it is to use. Alright, so we have a new cube, new material, space to render. What do we want the floor to look like? I'm going to hit the seamless option. Actually, no, let's not do that yet. I think for the floor, we probably want some sort of simple pattern. I'm going to do that. Why don't we choose a material first? We have this giant list of materials. There's even like a lot of concrete materials. I want this to be like a sci-fi type thing. I usually don't know exactly what I want something to look like going into a project. Just kind of experiment. Alright, that looks like a decent starting point. Now I'm just going to use the poly lasso and break this up a little bit. Maybe like that. Render. Yeah, I like the way that looks. So let's just repeat that. Render. Now seamless mode. I could see that being a floor. Let's try exporting it and see how it looks. Materials, ground textures. And I guess I should put the old one in a folder. Orange, white. And I'll just call this Rusty Floor. Alright, now we can save that scene. Scenes, calibration, Rusty Floor. And now we can go back to the default scene. Now for some reason we lost our textures, which is incredibly weird. Why would that happen? I don't think I've ever seen that happen before. Oh no. Oh, right. That's because I moved the textures after assigning them. Like an idiot. So I'm just going to have to reassign those really quick. So ground, orange, white. lock the inspector, and just reassign these. Sorry guys. If I had moved them around within this project folder, Unity could have kept track of them, but since I wasn't using this folder, it lost track of the maps. Height map, fix the normal map again. Occlusion, specular. Alright. Unlock. And for some reason it's still not showing up. Why would that be? Huh. Well, I guess I broke my material. That's irritating. One more time. There we go. Height map, normal map, occlusion, and specular. Alright. Now we're back to where we were before. Save that, and let's create a new material. We'll call this one Rusty Floor. I'm going to unlock the inspector, select the Rusty Floor, and lock the inspector. Albedo. Oh yeah, and we want specular setup again. Specular, occlusion, normal map, fix now, height map, save, and then we're going to drag that Rusty Floor onto the floor. And then we can just increase the tiling. I think that looks pretty alright. I mean, it's not fantastic. I think it would look a lot better if I had lined these up. But that's good enough for now. So I'm just going to create a perimeter. To do that, I'm going to duplicate my wall texture. And I'm just going to call this orange, white, gray repeating. It's such a long name, maybe I should start it with repeating. And unlock the inspector, so now I have the right material selected. And I'm going to set the tiling on this to like 20. Drop that on here. And now I can just scale this guy up. Okay, so the play is boxed in. Sort of. And these don't need to be so tall. Let's just drag them down. And I always hold control when I'm moving things so that they snap. There. That'll do. Alright, now I want to put some textures on the character, and I might be able to get away with just No, that's not going to work. No. Let's go ahead and create a new texture for the character. And actually, maybe I can get away with using a material from here. Surfforge materials. Oh yeah, we'll find something here that works. On the break between videos, I experimented with trying to texture this guy using Surfforge, and I couldn't zoom in on him. So I'm not even going to bother with that. I was kind of hoping, oh, that looks interesting. I was kind of hoping that I could find like a rusty metal. Maybe I'll just search rusty. No, that looks terrible. I'm sure this probably isn't very entertaining for you guys. Sorry about that. Okay, he's just going to be gold. Okay, I think I'm fine with the environment for now. I'm gonna try to add more detail as I go. I've also been programming for most of the day, so my brain is getting a little bit tired. But I'm going to forge ahead. So what now? Let's go ahead and make the gun point toward whatever he's aiming at. I want to go ahead and reset my layout because it looks awful right now. Can't find anything. Alright, so now let's grab this character and pull him back a little bit like this. And might as well move the camera with him just in case. Oh, that's weird. Surfforge interface. Okay, that's a Surfforge error. Don't care. Now I'm going into project, scripts, and character, and I'm just going to create a gun rotation. And I think I will just manually control this using the character. Depending on the project, I might actually put that on the weapon so that the weapon controls its rotation, but I think I'm just going to have the character do it on its own. So we need to give it a reference to the gun, transform, come on, transform, rifle, and I guess we should make that public. Give that a second to compile, and we're going to take the rifle and put it on the rifle slot. And while we're at it, just to prepare for letting the rifle fire, let's move this to the end of the weapon and call this muzzle. Save that. Now we have a reference to the rifle. So in update, we could try to get the position from this. That might be a good idea. Then again, I'm designing this for PC, so I don't think performance is going to be an issue. So I'm just going to call get mouse position again. We could make this a public variable and only search for it like once, but I'm just gonna do it here. So vector3 position equals utility get position under mouse. Oh yeah, and then we might as well just do it if they have the mouse button pressed. That way when they're running, they're not like aiming the gun around in weird ways. So if they're firing, get the position of the mouse in world space, and we want to rotate, but we don't want to rotate along any axis. I don't want it to rotate this way. I only want it to rotate up and down, because the character is already rotating toward where he wants to shoot. So it would be redundant to also have the weapon rotate. But then again, if the character is rotating, yeah, I think I can just say transform.lookAt. That'll make this a lot easier. I was thinking about constraining it to just the Y rotation, but I think that's just extra work. Transform.lookAt position. And it's not working. Oh, and that's because I'm not assigning that to the rifle, I'm assigning that to the character. Rifle.lookAt position. There. Now he can aim down, he can aim up. And I think I will do a check to make sure that the position is far enough away. Because I don't like how he's pointed down like that. It looks ridiculous. So float distance equals v3.distance position transform.position. Is that it? Yeah, okay. If distance is greater than, let's say 0.4f, and that's not working. So why didn't that work? There, that's better. Yeah, I like that. So he can't shoot at his feet. And also we need to mark the walls as static and recalculate the nav mesh. So I'm just going to select everything in the scene and deselect the camera and the character. Mark it all as static. Window, navigation, and bake. Alright, so now he should carve around the walls, rather than running directly into them like an idiot. He still kind of ran into it, but like at an angle that makes sense. Yeah, that should be fine. And I just hate the color on this character. I think I will try to texture him with Surforge. We'll see how it goes. Last time I tried, it was it did not look right at all. Put the hierarchy back over here. Dock Surforge. And we're just going to find the robot.fbx. Now to model directly on the object, we drag this mesh data. And you can't take the mesh. I mean, you can't take this whole object. You need just the mesh data. Put that in Open Model. And once it calculates, it should show the model. Is it working? It's not working at all. And that could be something I did wrong. Why don't we try reverting to factory settings? It could be something wrong with my model. Earlier I got it to... Oh. Now it's trying again. Alright, so that fixed it. Aha! And for some reason earlier it wouldn't zoom in correctly, but now it seems like it's working fine. So we can definitely texture this model. This is exciting. So if I hit this gizmo, it takes me into top view. And you can see my flattened out UVs of the model. Now I'm just going to choose a base color by hitting this button a few times. I think that looks fantastic. Now I'm going to hold Control to highlight his face. That's going to be this square. Now I'm going to use the lasso tool and double click his face, space to render. Oh, and that lost my... Okay, undo. Why don't we just draw a square around this whole piece. Render. Ooh, I like that orange color. Let's go back to that. Ah, I passed it. There we go. So now we have a base orange color. Come on. Yeah, I like that one the best. So now we have like a little rusty dude, and we can change colors on different pieces, or we could add like little detail cuts. I think I'm going to use the poly lasso and just cut like this. So that gives me some geometry here that I can work with, and I want to cut, or I want to draw directly on his chest. So first I'm going to try to figure out if this is the top or bottom. So this is the top of his chest. I'm going to undo that. And now click here, shift click here, and shift click, control click here. Space again, and now we actually have some geometry that looks interesting. And we can repeat that. Space. Yeah, that's looking pretty cool. Let's try to repeat that process on his back. And the reason I start by cutting around the piece is because if you do a cut, it has to go like the entire way through a piece of geometry. So like I couldn't cut from here to here because I have to actually break the geometry, and you can't just crack it in the middle. I don't know if that makes sense. Anyway, continuing on. Click, Shift, click, Control, click. Space. Alright. Now I want to put some details on his face. Where's that at? Right there. And so this I'm not going to cut around. I'm just going to add detail using this panel. Let's give him one of these. Shift, left click, and drag to scale. Click. And I don't like where that ended up. I sort of thought it would be in the top left, but let's see. So I guess this is the top right. So that means the top left is here? No, here. Okay. So top left, space. Let's move that down. Alright, I think that looks interesting. So I got a text that I had to respond to, so after about a 20-minute break, I'm back. I was just reviewing some of the recording from today, and it looks like some of the audio got messed up. There's like weird clicking, and like I don't know why part of that sounded so bad. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to clean it up. If the audio is bad when you guys are watching this, I am sorry. I hate bad audio in videos, so I hope I don't put you guys through too much of that. Alright, so we're just gonna kind of play around with this model. Maybe we can give him like knee joints. Where is that? Right here. There. And a really nice thing about doing this in Unity is like this one is out of alignment, so I'm just going to kind of move it around, hit space, and just kind of play with it until it looks good. If you were painting directly on the model, you probably wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, maybe if you were doing it in like Photoshop or something. But either way, this is a pretty good system. Oops. Alright, that'll be fine for now. So now I'm just going to export this video. I mean this texture. And I sort of doubt that anyone is still watching this, honestly. If you're watching this, leave a comment saying that this video was worthwhile. I kind of feel like this is I feel like this has gone on too long. It's been a long day. Alright, so what am I trying to do? I'm trying to export this texture to my materials folder. We'll create a new folder called humanoid, and I'm just going to call this robot1. So that's going to give us the 6 different textures for creating the PBR material. So now if we go back to the other scene, I'm not going to bother saving that. The lighting looks weird. That's because it's calculating. You can see that down here. Now let's go ahead and create the new material. Hopefully the lighting clears up. I don't know. It usually doesn't look that bad off the bat. Anyway, let's create a material. And I'm just going to call this one character. And I'm going to give it the texture we just made, which is in humanoid. So I can lock the inspector on this. Albedo, emission, remember set this to specular. Specular, normal map, fix now, height map, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm missing one, occlusion, where's that, occlusion. Alright, now I'm just going to take this material and drop it onto the character. Like that. And hit play. And I think there's something weird going on with Unity right now. So as an attempt to fix it, I'm going to revert to factory settings. The lighting is still weird. I'm going to go ahead and open the lighting tab. And I'm just going to turn these off. Build. There we go. Alright, so now the character has a little bit more depth to him. I'm not used to going so fast creating projects. Honestly, it's I prefer to take my time and really like add a lot more detail to things. So it's really like my brain is just not enjoying the difference between the wall and the ground, and I don't like the way the character looks. I like the animations and I like the structure we've built so far, but I'm just not happy at all with the art. Okay, so now I want to texture the weapon, and my plan is to first unwrap it. So I'm going to connect the two objects, Control J. Now it's one object. I'm going to hit U, Smart UV Project, island margin of 0.03, and save and export as FBX. I don't remember which one we're using. I guess we must be using the .blend file. Weapons, yeah, okay, cool. And now that we mapped that, you can see rather than just being one solid color, it actually has some variation. And rather than opening up Surfforge, because that takes more time than I'm interested in putting in, I'm just going to drag the character material onto the weapon. And that looks fine. Yeah, okay. So he can move, he's textured, he has a weapon. Now the next thing to do is to let him fire the weapon. So let's create a new script for that. And we're just going to say gun, I'll just call it rifle. And I'm just going to put this directly on the rifle, because we're already controlling where the rifle aims. So we don't have to, this doesn't really depend on the character or anything. And that landed on the graphics object. So I'm going to remove that component and put it on the rifle itself. And that's just a personal preference type thing. Now I'm going to open up the rifle script. Public transform muzzle. And if you've made it this far in the video, I am quite impressed. Let me know, because I'll definitely be impressed. So now, as the control for the gun, we want to listen for when the mouse is pushed down. So input.get button. If we use get button down, that's only one frame. So we're going to use get button, which fires every single frame that the button is held. And we're going to do something at the muzzle position. And now we could spawn a particle system, we could spawn a bullet, we could spawn pretty much anything we want. I think I'm going to do just a prefab, and then I might attach a trail render and or a particle system to that. So I'm going to say public game object bullet, and this is going to be a prefab that we build. So now I want to create that prefab. So I'm going to put it right here, just so that it's centered in the scene, and then I'm going to take it off the character, and I'm just going to call this projectile. Now we can drop that down into a prefabs folder, prefabs, projectile. And now even if we delete it from our scene, we still have this backup copy, and we can just spawn the backup copy whenever we want. Now, Unity just added this noise module, which looks really, really cool. This will be the first time I've ever used it. But right now, that's a system with no noise, and that's a system with noise. You can see it looks a lot better. Now I want this to not emit anything. I guess we can do a burst. So 0, 5. And I don't want them to move, because this is the bullet, so I don't want the particles to move away from the bullet, like they're just going to be centered around the bullet. So start speed 0. Start size 0.2. And that noise module just looks so cool. Strength, whoops, 0.2. It's kind of interesting how it seems like it's moving to the left. Also, it would be nice if we could make it repeat. Doesn't look like it wants to do that. Huh, I do not like that jump at all. Frequency, scroll speed, damping, octaves. Huh, I'm really surprised there's not like some sort of repeat option. Oh, you know what? I can actually set the lifetime to something like 50. And then we shouldn't see it loop back on itself. There's no way the particle is going to be alive for a whole 50 seconds. So now we have a particle system, and for some reason it can't move. Why is that? Maybe it's frozen. I guess it's frozen. I don't know why there's so many particles, because I only want it to burst 30 at the start. Set that to 5. Simulate. And my goal is to get some sort of like plasma spark effect. So I want some really erratic jolting movement. So I want them to stay within a small radius, but move really fast. And I don't know how to do that. But I'm going to try to find out. Ooh, that's looking better. So I turn up octave scale, bring down frequency, bring down strength. No, that's not what I want. I wonder if I make these particles larger. Simulate. Can I scale them down like that? Oh yeah. Interesting. Alright, so now they're acting really erratically. Now let's go ahead and bring up the start size to like 10. Bring this down to like 0.1. F to zoom in. Simulate. Yeah, okay, now bring it down even further. 0.05, 0.05, 0.05. Simulate. Now I think I can make trails on each of those pieces. Maybe. Emission, projectile, collision, trails. Here we go. Alright, so now we need a trail texture, maybe? World space, die with particles, particle, assign a material in the renderer module. Oh, trail material, okay. Interesting. That's not quite what I wanted. Ratio 0.1. Yeah, that's looking closer to what I wanted. Width of trail, 0.1, ratio 1. Ah, there we go. Much better. Sometimes you just have to play with it until it looks decent. Alright, now I can take those particles and rather than having them size 10, I'll just change it to size 1. Oh, and that shrank the trails too. So change the width of the trails back up to something larger. 1. Yeah, there we go. That looks so cool. Alright, we're up to an hour. I think I'm just going to keep going. I'm having fun. And now I think I'll take off the burst and actually try wait over time. Let's just see what happens with 1. Yeah, the new noise and the new trail renderer make this so much cooler. Start lifetime. Okay, let's set the duration to 50 and start lifetime to 5. Start lifetime to 2. Hopefully one day I can do a whole series just on the particle systems, because you can get some really cool functionality out of this stuff. I mean, this is cool, but this is really simple. I just figured it out by trial and error. You can do much cooler stuff than that. You can even have entire weapon systems that are just particles. With all the new particle system features, you can actually detect collisions with particles. And so you can write code, like you can see if we enable this collision module, we can send collision messages, and then we can pick up those callbacks in our code and have like entire weapons systems just based on particle systems. And that's actually a lot more processor friendly than sending colliders bouncing around the scenes. If you can just send the particles, you can save a lot of processing time. Oh no, I crashed Unity. Oh, that's so frustrating. Man, oh man, that's so frustrating. Well, there goes my new particle system. Well, it's 10:30. I guess I'll keep going. I wanted to build a whole game today. I was not very productive the first half of the day, so now I'm very much behind. And I think we lost the entire particle system. Oh, no, I saved it. Yes, that is a huge relief. I would have been very sad if I had to build the whole thing again. Okay, so now save one more time and hit play. Will it crash? No, it will not. Excellent. Okay, and now I think that when it first starts, we should have a burst of like 5 at least. Simulate. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and apply this to the prefab, and then we can delete it from the scene. And actually, before we delete it, I'm not 100% confident in my abilities to use the particle collision system that they just built. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't want to try to teach you that now. So I'm just going to add a collider to this, and we'll just use a box collider because that's like the simplest type of collider. And this isn't very processor friendly, but it'll work for now. So one more time, we're going to apply that prefab, delete it from the scene, select our weapon, take the projectile, put it in the bullet slot, take the muzzle and drop that in the muzzle slot, and go back to the script. When the fire button is pressed, we're going to create a game object, bullet instance equals game object dot instantiate bullet transform. Oh, and then we want to we're going to use this method here. We have the object to spawn, the position to spawn it at, and the rotation. So we're going to use muzzle.position and muzzle.rotation. And now, if we save that, Unity is going to give us an error. Oh, maybe not. Well, they used to force you to say as game object, which was super annoying. Alright, so now we can move around. Oh, we're blocked in because we just created boxes around ourselves. But we created something. Wow, that looks really cool. Okay. Now, I also want to create a script to kill the bullets after they've been in the air too long. So we'll just say utility, and I can put my utility script in the utility folder. Whoops. Now I'm going to create a script of type C# called die after time. And I literally make the exact same script every time I create bullets. If you followed the FPS tutorial, you already know how to make this. Prefabs. That's weird. Oh, there. Die after time. And I'm just going to say public float lifetime. Private. No, that should be enough. If time.time is greater than lifetime. Oh, and actually, why don't we have a private variable called death time? Private float death time. And this will be lifespan, actually. Lifespan equals 5. And death time equals time.time plus lifespan. Now, another thing to keep in mind, if you're building a real game, especially if you're building it for mobile, like for Android or iPhone, you probably don't want to spawn and destroy bullets every time you need them. You should probably have some sort of object pool where you spawn like 20 of them and they're like hiding behind the scenes, and then as you need them you can just pull them into your scene, and then when you don't need them anymore you just hide them. That way you're not constantly allocating memory to create them and then erasing that memory. That's just like a lot of processing that's wasted. For this, I'm not really worried about efficiency, so I'm just spawning and destroying the bullets as necessary. And what this script does is we give it a lifespan, we give it a death time. When the item is spawned, the death time is whatever time it is now plus how long this should survive. And then once the clock gets past that point, we just kill it. So now we can create some particles and they should disappear. Alright, and I think that the plasma effect that I made is a little bit too intense. So I'm going to select the projectile particle system and change the emission to like 1. And we can just simulate that. Maybe like 3. And you know what? Actually, I don't think we need to do that. I'm going to keep it at 5. and we just need to slow down how fast we're spawning the bullets, because actually that spawned, like if I held it down for 1 second, that probably spawned about 60 of these, because we're doing it every frame. So what we're going to do first is add public float fire rate, private float fire cooldown, and we'll set fire rate to like 0.3. No, let's make it something bigger, like 0.5. Let's do 0.8. So every 0.8 seconds, we are allowed to create one bullet. If input, if we're holding the mouse button down and time.time is greater than fire cooldown, that means we're ready to fire the weapon. And we're just going to set fire cooldown to time.time plus fire rate. Whoops. So like we're firing the weapon, whatever time it is now, we are going to add the speed at which we fire to that time, and that'll be our cooldown. After that point, we're ready to fire again. So that's what this is saying. So now every 0.8 seconds we create a bullet. And now we just need to make that shoot across the screen. So to do that, I am going to give it a rigid body, even though it is incredibly inefficient. Again, this is not the way you should do it if you're really building a game. But since I'm building it for PC and I don't really care too much, this will be fine. And also, there's a trade-off because my models don't have a lot of like mesh data. Like these are really simple models, and the map has really simple geometry. So I could pretty much do whatever I want with code, and any modern computer can handle it. But if you have like really high poly models and like a lot of objects in your scene, you probably shouldn't put rigid bodies on your bullets. The most efficient way is using the particle system and just shoot out a particle, detect its collision, and act on that event. So now that we gave this rigid body, I'm going to turn off uses gravity, and I'm going to get that component from the bullet instance. So rigid body r_body equals bullet instance dot get component rigid body r_body dot add force muzzle dot forward times shot force. And we'll just define shot force as public float shot force equals 200 to start off. Alright, so those definitely need to fly faster. And I don't know, I just don't really like the way it looks when it's flying through the air like that. Just doesn't look good. So now we can just move up shot force. Rifle, shot force, something more like 1,000. Let's see what that looks like. Another benefit to using just the particle is if you shot out like a shotgun spray of particles, they would all hit the wall at different spots rather than this nonsense where it sort of like bounces off like a ball. If I had more time, I would just do that now. I would just figure out how to do it. I've never done it before, but I have an idea. And that's definitely the better way to do it. So I'll do that next time. But again, it's 10:30 at night. I'd like to go to bed soon. So I just want to make this look a little bit better. Projectile. Why does it... I feel like it looks really cool here, and then when it's actually moving, it looks really crappy. Why don't we make this much more sporadic? Change this to like 15. Start speed 1. Start lifetime 1. And we can even make the noise stronger. Turn this up to like 80. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Apply, play. And we can give it a script that kills it when it hits something. We might as well put that on die after time. Public bool die on collision. Whoops. Equals false by default. Void on collision enter. And this is a callback built into Unity. It's anything that has a collider will call this method when it hits something. If die on collision, destroy game object. And it's not doing anything because we have to set die on collision to true. And while we're at it, we might as well make the box collider much smaller so that we only count the hit if it's like in the center of the mass. So size 5, 5, 5. So the player has to be really accurate with this weapon. Apply and delete. Still doesn't really seem sporadic enough, which is surprising because when I simulate it here, it seems like it really just pops right off the bat. Why don't we start with like 50? Apply. Seems like he kind of slides after he reaches a stopping point. That could be because he's running into the rifle. I'm going to go ahead and take off the collider on the rifle if there is one. Mesh filter. Huh. Doesn't look like there is one, which is surprising. Yeah, it's looking a little bit better now. Let's go ahead and bring down the max a little bit to like 30. And I'm just going to bring this noise up by like twice. Yeah, that's a little bit more like what I had in mind. That's too much though. Also, I don't like how it hits the ground over here. If the character's aiming this way, they're probably trying to shoot like out this direction, not into the ground. So if the raycast to the ground, I mean if the raycast hits the ground, I think I'm just going to add a little bit to the height. So I'm going to put this on a layer called ground. And in my utility script, if hit.layer hit.gameObject.layer transform there we go equals 1. Okay, this is layer 8. Hit.point.y equals hit.point.y plus 2. And we just need to make sure we assign the ground layer to the ground. So now when the gosh darn it, cannot modify type. Okay. It doesn't want us to modify the hit vector, so we're just going to assign it to a different one. Vector hit point equals hit dot point. Alright, so now we find the hit point, well, like we find the intersection of the mouse with the world. We assign that to a new variable called hit point, which we are going to return at the end. If the hit object is on layer 8, we add 2 in the y direction to our vector. There. And I guess this would be a problem if, well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. If there was an enemy here, he would aim down at them. 3D object, cube. Like, he can still aim at this point, he just can't aim at the floor there. Yeah, I think that works out pretty well. I'm still not even close to satisfied with that projectile. Just looks awful. Whoa, it's black. That's different. noise, trails, lifetime. Oh. Why don't we make this like 0.5? And I don't know what it would look like if we changed this to tile. Tile. Stretch. Huh. I think that looks better actually. Go ahead and apply that. Delete, delete. And I'm going to change the start size to 0.5 and the trail size to 2. Yeah, this looks ridiculous. Why don't we get some color variation in that? Start color. Random between 2 colors. Let's do orange and yellow. It's very cartoony. Let's go back to blue. Okay, now I'm going to move the camera up. Camera up. Rotate on the x-axis. Oops. Did it get moved? Oh, whatever. You can't tell if it's moving itself. And I want to put the player and the particles coming from the player on different layers. Player and player projectiles. Player. Alright, and now if I go into Edit, Project Settings, and Physics, we can find the player column and the player projectiles. Oh, why is that? Player. Oh, here we go. So, player and player projectiles. I'm deselecting that. So now collisions will not register between this guy and his spawned bullets. Because it kind of seemed like he was like running into him before. But now that's physically impossible. Now I want to see what this looks like if I move the camera like way up. It's really kind of off-putting when he like stops running like that when he turns. Anyway, I think I'll cut this off here. If you guys want me to do a top-down shooter series in the future, I would be happy to do that. I really like the concept of top-down shooters. I think that this was just a kind of failed attempt to build one. Honestly, I'm glad that we got a rigged character to move around and fire in the scene. We don't have any enemies. The environment sucks. This is really not a successful project so far. So maybe we can try again in the future. Anyway, I'll pick up with the tower defense series possibly this week. I know you guys are following. I know a lot of you guys are following that and enjoying it. So sorry to interrupt it with this nonsense. I wanted to do something cool for my 100th video. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your feedback and comments, and I will see you in the future.